Noriega started to aid the Sandinista government and became involved in drug trade. U.S. tried to cut ties with him. Noriega increased his power and gained control of the Panama military in 1983. He basically was a dictator of the country. Info about the internal coup reached the U.S. military in Panama, but Bush administration chose not to get involved because the plan seemed sketchy. The coup failed, and Manuel's forces executed the coup leader. Many critics criticized Bush for missing out on an opportunity to take Noriega out. Once this happened, Bush ordered his foreign affairs team to put together a plan to remove him. December 20th, the U.S. military launched Operation Just Cause and sent 10,000 troops to meet up with the 13,000 already there. Noriega surrendered to U.S. forces in early January. It was the largest military deployment since Vietnam War and showed Bush as a strong, decisive leader. When Bush became president in 1989, the U.S. had already begun to see a thawing of relations with the Soviet Union. Before becoming president in 1988, Bush, as the vice president, attended a summit between Reagan and the Soviet Premier Mikhail Gorbachev when East Germany opened its border and tore down the Berlin Wall in 1989. It marked a symbolic end to communist rule in Eastern Europe. To most people, it meant the Cold War was over. At a press conference on November 9th, Bush offered a muted response and said, "I am very pleased." He didn't show enthusiasm on the purpose, and it worked because it helped avoid backlash from Eastern Europe. He also didn't want to endanger future relations. While his noble sign of not acquiring victory over communism in Europe helped, it cost him at home because conservatives said Reagan would have celebrated with some type of public address. In 1990, they signed the Board of Arms Reduction Agreement. Both the Soviets and the U.S. decreased nuclear arsenals. In July of 1991, Bush met Gorbachev in Moscow and signed the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, known as START. In China, rulers brutally stopped student demonstrations in the Tiananmen Square in Beijing in the spring of 1989. The People's Liberation Army and the military, which was an arm of the Chinese government, used tanks and armored cars to suppress the pro-democracy movement in Beijing. 700 to 2,700 people were killed. President Bush personally knew the leaders of China and continued to keep contact with them after their own actions toward democracy, despite publicly condemning the massacre and suspending the sale of American weapons to China on June 5th. This angered human rights activists, but had hardly any effect on China.